Whether you're here because you're somebody who is on the bus lot each and every morning waiting for that yellow vehicle to come over to the horizon and wave to your kids, or if you're answering phone calls in the front office, or you are an administrator who helps with discipline and helps manage the whole piece of it, whatever your role is with the buses, I want to first start by saying thank you so much. It is a very, very important role, especially to me and my team here in the back of the room. We know that the bus is a place where kids need to feel safe, both inside the vehicle and then once they're in their neighborhoods, and you guys each have a very important part of making sure that they are safe. So thank you so much for doing that for us. My name is Lisa Riveros. I'm the transportation director. I've been in this role this is my 5th school year. Prior to this, I was one of the people on the bus slots waving to the bus as it came to Pleasant Valley Middle School for 2 years and then North High before that. So I definitely enjoyed that role, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that role as well. I have some very important people here that I want to introduce to you, and it is my team. I'm going to start with my Wichita Public Schools team first. Denise is a scheduler here with us, working at 5:30 in the morning or often before, very frequently making sure that our technology is ready for you. Next to Denise, we have Kim. Kim is also a scheduler and also here at 5:30 making sure that the technology is ready for you. Christia is so knowledgeable in special education transportation, and she'll be speaking to us a little bit later about what's new with SPED transportation. Yesenia is one of our schedulers, and she is here into the evening. 5:30 is usually the earliest that she'll ever go home, making sure that all of our kindergartners and our young ones are delivered home safely. And then we have Crystal right next to her doing the same thing, definitely talking with our parents, making sure that they feel comfortable with their kids on the buses. Emily is the face of the office. She is our scheduler who works with receptionists, helping parents, helping everything that needs to happen there. And then Lisa does lots of our schools and helps with the parents and everything there too. So I do appreciate them coming here today, and you guys will receive emails from them a lot this year, whether it be a bus that's late or just some information like an incident on the bus. That's your front line communicating with you and helping you out. As I move over to this side, we have Mickey back here. Mickey is an office supervisor, and he'll be speaking to you quite a bit today too. And then behind me, Julia is the one who schedules and arranges all these great meetings and does everything great out at our school lots and works with incidences. So I appreciate all of them. Also here with me today is my first student team, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Kerry.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Kerry Dixon, Senior Location Manager with First Student. I started with First Student when we took over the contract back in 2010. As a location manager at the North Lot, probably worked with some of you, and then 6 years ago, promoted to senior location manager. I have my team with you, part of my team here with me today. Some of them are still back at the lots getting ready for dry runs, which start on Wednesday. So if you see our buses out at your schools, we actually have a few of them starting today, some of our new drivers that are out there learning their routes early. So if you see buses will start running Wednesday, we'll be pulling up to the school for timing. So I'll start with Alan Funk, North Lot Location Manager. Next to him is Karen Tibbetts, Assistant Location Manager at the North Lot. In the back, Jean Ann Dyer. She is the South Lot Location Manager, and her Assistant Location Manager is Jimmy. Next to Jean Ann is Chelsea Gutierrez. She is our Customer Service Liaison. So if you guys have a concern or a complaint, and yet, as most of you know, we have 2 lots. We don't want you guys to try to guess which bus that lot's coming off of. Start with Chelsea. Okay, and you'll have all her contact information, whether it's by phone or email. Email's probably the easiest, and then she can get the complaint to the lot that the bus runs off of. Okay, so it'll make it easier for you guys. Don't have to figure out which lot that bus is running off of. Last thing I have is I want to thank you all for what you do. I mean, all of you in here support us. I look at Lisa, team and you guys, we're all as one team, because it takes a team to pull off what everybody's pulled off over the last couple of years dealing with COVID. This year we will start short on drivers. To make you all aware, we do have 20 drivers coming in from Minnesota that will be here Wednesday to help us. If you see them, just thank them. You'll probably recognize them, and they'll probably tell you that they're from Minnesota helping him. They will be here through September 2nd. We're fortunate they don't start school until after Labor Day, so they can come to Kansas and help us through the first few weeks of school. We do have positive news. Our pipeline is the strongest it's been in probably 6 or 7 years. Classrooms are full. It's just getting everybody trained. It's about a 3-week training process to get everybody through the system and get them behind the bus, behind the wheel. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, we do have new drivers. We don't just throw those new drivers out to the wolves, okay? We will have somebody with them for the first at least 2, maybe 3 days that they start running. So if you see somebody in there with them, we've started a mentor program. They are the new drivers' mentors. So that will kind of help you recognize who a new driver is that's just starting with us this year. Thank you all.
First Student has been a partner with us for a very long time, and it is with such gratitude that I have the opportunity to introduce them to you each and every day. The men and women that you see in the back and the 600 drivers and monitors that they represent really do work very, very hard to do the very best that they can for your kids' as families, and for you. They're often up at 4:30 in the morning, maybe earlier, and they're often still there at the lot when our high school athletics are getting done at 6:37. So they work very, very hard to make sure that our kids are safe and that they're ready to learn and get to you in time. All right, so First Student is our main partner. They are the main people that we work with each and every day. In the pie chart we have way up there, they represent the orange. They really are just like us. They're on our team. But we do have 2 other groups that provide transportation for our kids. From the slides you can see in the middle, we have Wichita Transit. Wichita Transit serves about 800 of our kids each and every day. And automatically your minds might go directly to, are these high school kids? Are they older kids who can manage it? And that's not necessarily true. We have kids at Menaha Elementary. We've had them before at Pleasant Valley Elementary. We do get elementary kids on the buses from time to time. And we certainly get our middle school kids on the buses. I helped an Allison middle school parent with it just today. Coleman, Hamilton, other schools that are on the routes. And finally, after Wichita Transit, we have a sedan company called Everdriven. Everdriven provides student transportation in a sedan that any one of us may have. Typically, it seats 3 to 4 kids. Typically, they're 4-door vehicles. And the way that you can tell that they're serving our kid is by a placard in their window. It's blue, it says Everdriven. It kind of has a little teardrop like you see on a map. And then it also has a magnet on the side indicating that they are safe for our kids. All 3 of these options are safe and that the drivers are trained to work with kids. Actually, the Everdriven drivers are trained by First Student, so they receive the exact same training. Also, there's a camera in any one of these vehicles. And also you can monitor any one of these vehicles with GPS. So these are our partners, and these are some of the partners that you may see at your schools. Here's who we transport. In Wichita Public Schools, we have about 47,000 kids. Back 5 years ago, before COVID, we had around 50,000 kids. In both scenarios today and back then, we had just over 16,000 kids that we provided transportation to each and every day. The reasons why they're transported are up on the board. You guys can see that, you can read that. In most cases, you consider that kids that live 2.5 miles or more. It's our special needs kids who have transportation as a related service. It's our magnet kids. It's our kids that don't have a safe walk path to get to school. What is very, very interesting about this piece of information is back 5 years ago when we were transporting just a couple hundred kids less, we had 440 vehicles on the road. This coming year, we're going to end up with about 370 vehicles on the road. So we have the same number of kids that we're transporting with a significant less number of vehicles. The buses that you will see pulling up to your schoolyards are going to have more kids on them than what the kids could potentially think needs to be on them. Kids like to have a whole seat to themselves. They'd like to chill out with their headphones on or just have that space, right, that they're used to. Unfortunately, this school year, very often you're going to see 3 kids to a seat. This is standard at every level, kindergarten through high school. I know any one of you sitting here probably doesn't want to have 3 adults on a seat, but in the high schools, in some cases, that's what we have, that standard that's safe. We don't ever want kids on the floor or leaning against the exit door, but they can sit 3 to a seat and they're scheduled that way. And again, the reason why is because we have less buses on the road than we've had in the past, primarily due to driver shortage. First Student, I assure you, is going to do every single thing that they can in order to get your kids to you. Yes, we have between 50 and 60 buses without drivers, which might mean that some of your schools have a sub bus. Those drivers coming in from Minnesota are going to do the best they can to navigate around the city. They do have voice-to-voice navigation. And then as they are here through August, hopefully we'll get more and more drivers trained. Just because we have a driver shortage, it doesn't mean that your kids deserve anything less than stellar service. Okay, when you go into McDonald's and if there is a shortage in the service industry, I understand it may mean you need to wait a little bit longer for your food, but that's your food. We're talking about somebody's kid. Okay, somebody's kid is far more different than a hamburger or whatever it is that you ordered and how long it takes to get to you. So we're going to do every single thing we can to get them to you safe and as quick as possible. If you have a bus that is consistently running significantly late where you're seeing learning loss with kids, don't just shrug and say, well, they told us they didn't have drivers, this must be the way it is. That's not the way it is. Reach out to me, reach out to Mickey, reach out to your scheduler, reach out to Julia, let us know, and we'll do every single thing we can to be as creative as possible. We want to make sure that your kids are served. All right, so today's conversation isn't going to be a Transportation 101. Everything that's a Transportation 101 is inside this book right here. Each of you should have received it when you walked in. If your principal sent you and you think that he or she could benefit from one of these, grab an extra one and take it back for them. Okay, if at the end of this presentation you feel that this went too quickly and you need some of the basics, reach out to your scheduler, reach out to one of us, and we'll go through and we will talk about some of the basics because today's not a day of the basics. That's all in here for you. Other resources for the basics include our Teams page. Congratulations, just by coming today, you will be registered for our Teams page. Use the place where people post and chat. Use that, put in questions, that's cool. If you go underneath the Files tabs, you're gonna find lots and lots of files of resources. Check those out now, or when you have a question, or when you reach out to us, you might be, hey, where do I get that video request form? We're gonna say, go inside the files, and you should be able to find it there. Another resource when you walked in is the First View QR code page. Go ahead and grab one of these. It might be to your benefit to put them up in your office. If you have older kids and you want to put them up in their advisory room or wherever they get their tablets from or wherever they hang out, you can sure do that. We want people to track their buses because we want them to know where their buses are. When a bus is running 5 minutes late in the morning, that parent could call your office and say, hey, where's my kid's bus? And then you need to look it up and give them that information. Or they could just open up their app and know for themselves where it is and what the ETA is. In the second scenario, it lets your office run a lot more smoothly because you guys aren't concentrating on bus issues because parents can track their own buses. So please grab some of those if you want to. There's also electronic copies of this on our Teams page.
Hopefully you also picked up one of these contact forms when you came in. We just need one of them filled out for each school. And we need to know who everyone is on your bus support team. We also need you to identify who will be managing first acts from your school. And when you identify the person or persons managing first acts, make sure whoever that is, and you can designate whoever you want to, that the person managing first acts is going to take the time to do that on a regular basis. We really had a problem over the last 2 years with first acts write-ups not being addressed in a timely manner, and they would build up over months. A lot of schools would just not address them, and it bogged down the system. So we need those addressed daily or weekly at the latest. So again, whoever's going to manage those needs to do it on a regular basis. and then also who needs access to First View, and we'll give out those permissions and access to users for First View. And then going back a little bit to what Lisa was saying when she talked about and had the slide for the transportation basics and talked about who all our riders were. We have a sign up in the back for the committee that will talk about policies, and I think you'll talk about that a little bit later. But the information she shared about who rides and our service, if any of that hit a nerve or resonated with you and you want to have input for that, sign up for that committee. Going back to that contact form, if you're a high school, I need to know if you're an alpha, if you're an assistant principal and you are designated for a certain alpha group on First Acts, if you need to receive a certain letter alpha group of students for First Acts, please designate that on that contact form. The drivers and monitors, they really enjoy getting information from you about your school and feeling a part of your team. They view your students as their students, so make them feel welcome, and some ideas on how to include them and make them feel like they are part of your building team, and showing them where those restrooms are, and that green bus door and that secondary shelter is really important too, where they need to go in severe weather event. Okay, getting students on correct buses. So that the first week of school, first couple of weeks of school, really important. We have copies of some run sheets and reports that you receive from your schedulers that we'll look at, but checking those run numbers and making sure parents and students have the information, verifying those effective dates, making sure the kindergartners have the backpack tags. It gets really chaotic. And in summer school this year, we had 4 missing students during dismissal at one school this summer. And listening to that radio traffic in dispatch, it is so scary and dangerous. And we just really need school staff to slow down that process at dismissal. And we need you to have a plan. And we need you to take the information that we give you in this room and take it back to all of those teachers and paras that take kids out to the bus. Because it's not just you in this room, it's those teachers and paras that are taking students out to the bus that don't hear this information. So we need you to share the information and have a plan with those folks and slow that process down so that it's not just, it's the end of the day, thank goodness the bus is here, I'm done, get them on the bus and go. But slow it down, have a plan. We've really worked with First Student to label those buses and be better about that. But unfortunately, with that driver shortage, there still are so many buses that are subbed that can't be labeled because they're subbing those buses while they're out on routes already. You really have to double check that run number and verify it with the driver. So making sure they are getting on the right bus. And if the effective date on the run sheet isn't current and the driver doesn't have that student on the run sheet, don't load the student on that bus. And if the report that you're looking at, if the date on that report was generated prior to the current effective date, not all reports have an effective date, and we'll talk about that when we look at these reports. You've got to remember, reports are generated and sent on Wednesdays, and the current effective date is the following Monday. So keep that in mind when you're looking at run sheets and reports, that you can't put students on buses until the effective date.
Okay, she talked about the effective date on the top right-hand corner. And again, I can't say it enough. I don't think anyone in our office can say it enough. Please don't put students on a bus if they're not scheduled. If Vanita, I schedule from Mueller. And if Vanita sends me a request today, actually she did, I put those kids in for the effective date that we're working now, but then Thursday she sends me another request, that effective date's gonna be different. Okay, so we have to really, really make sure that we're paying attention to that. The green kindergarten bus tags, please make sure that your folks get those on their students, on their backpacks, and then when those students are being loaded, try to get those kindergarten students towards the front, making sure that the driver is aware of who those students are.
The kindergarten tags, do you want their first and last name? What do we want on them? I mean, do we write anything on them at all?
Well, do you want to answer that? Because I think we have to be careful what we put on those.
So my office has sent the yellow backpack tags to each school, so it's consistent. The first year that we did it, we actually put the first and last name on there, and we had some parents with concerns about having their child's name and then walking home with that. So this time we have left it blank for the schools to decide if they need to put something on there. A child needs to have the ability to articulate their name to a driver. If a child says their name in a way that the person who doesn't know them can understand, a name is not necessary. If a child's name is unique or the child says it softly or you have concerns that the child won't be able to say their name, then I would suggest maybe even putting a first name and a last initial or something on there. And you can leave that up to your teachers, or you guys can decide at your building what that may look like. Thank you for asking.
The rest of the run sheet just provides you information, stop information, student information. Anytime we make a change, here at the bottom where it says run changes, we will let you know or tell you what that change is, whether it be a time change or we added a student, deleted stop, whatever it may be. We'll put that information in that run changes box. And it used to say notes on that, but that'll help you tremendously. Okay, this is the bus run report. This information is going to give you all of your AM runs, which are at the top. They always start with 0, and then your PM runs always start with 1, and then your special education runs are going to be your 4s and your 5s. This is helpful because while we have a driver shortage, if we're having to combine runs and we delete a run, you may see Robinson 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. We deleted 5. Okay, so that just lets you know how many bus runs you have and whether there were some added or deleted. And also make sure that you pay attention again to the date and time. That date and time is the date that we actually generated the report, not the effective date. Student rider alpha list. Okay, the alpha is a list of every single student that attends your school. This is not meant, and we'll go back to effective dates. This is not meant for you to look at and say, okay, this student belongs on this bus. This is more of a reference to you. If a parent calls and says, hey, I didn't get my student's run information, and you go to the alpha, you can easily go to it. You can easily go to it and tell them what run their student's on, or whether or not their student's even on a run, and be able to give them times. Please don't use this for the first day of school. Use your run sheets. It's very, very important that you're using your run sheets and not the alpha. We try to send the alpha every week for at least the first month of school, because we're making so many changes so that you guys know who's on the bus, who's not on the bus. But again, please don't use it for the first day of school. Use your run sheets. It's important. And again, at the bottom, there's that date. That date, again, is when we generated the report, not the effective date. Let's talk about the effective date, or the run sheets that go out every Wednesday, effective for Monday. As a matter of fact, I did it last week. I sent an alpha out on a Wednesday along with the run sheets. But behind that, I still did some work on that. And so the same day I sent those run sheets out to you and I sent the alpha out to you, let's say I just sent the reports out at 4 o'clock, but I still had some work to do. I'm gonna work till 5:30, 6 o'clock. Well, I'm using a different effective date, even though I'm putting those kids on. So if I sent you an alpha at 4 o'clock and you decided for whatever reason, I happen to be there at 6 o'clock, you want me to send you another alpha? Well, that work that I did from 4:30 or 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, those students are actually gonna be on there, but they're not effective for that date. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's why you don't wanna use that, because these kids, this block of kids that I just put on, it may appear that they go on first day of school, but actually they don't.
All right, guys, on these sheets, it has students' first and last names, and it gets their names from the Synergy field, first name and last name. We also know that there's a Synergy field of preferred name. And in a lot of cases, those preferred names is a nickname. If it's Alexander, it's Allie. But at your building level, you also know is a very, very tiny percentage of our kids whose legal first and last name, if they are called out by it, will cause some humiliation. And we don't know that in our office. So if you have a kid that you know inside your school, all the teachers know this is what we call this child, calling them something else may cause humiliation, and you tell all your teacher and your school staff that, can you also share that with either your bus driver or with us? We don't know dead names. You guys do. If you do, just let us know, okay? That's perfect. All right, so the topics that were discussed here, it's kind of like, if we have one big learning takeaway, this is what I would like for it to be if we come right back here, is let's get kids on the right buses. Like, let's not have kids lost. Let's not have 911 calls out. This is my number one big learning objective for today. And so what I'm gonna do in just a minute is I'm gonna turn it over to your tables. And I want you guys for about 2 to 3 minutes, talk at your tables. What is your strategy to make sure your kids end up on the right bus on the right day? Okay, and it's gonna vary a little bit by level. A first grader might have something different than a high schooler, but talk at your table. Go ahead, you guys get 2 or 3 minutes, ready, go.
I think run sheets trump all the other reports.
Yep.
So if you're questioning the other reports, run sheet will trump all others. And the date, the effective date on that run sheet and the run sheet itself is what trumps all others.
You guys feel free to make sure that you can contact someone in our office, whether it be your scheduler, whether it be me, Julia, or Lisa. If you have any questions or doubts or whatever it might be, give us a call and ask us. We're happy to help you.
Okay, bus staging. We work all summer on getting things ready for drivers. And so bus staging changes at this point, we won't make any bus staging changes. And we print bus staging lists each summer for their driver notebooks. And I work with the city and throughout the year on signage and projects. And so I know I've done that with a lot of you. So, and I've already got sticky notes on the current bus staging list that we just printed. So I've heard from schools already that want to make changes for next year. So I've already got sticky notes for changes for next year. But so bus staging changes we will start looking at and for next year, but we can't make changes now, but we'll start looking at changes for next year. And but make sure that your SPED classes, SPED teachers, SPED paras, pre-K, those folks a lot of times will try to tell drivers to go somewhere else or go to a different door. And that sends a different message. And so we want to make sure that we're being consistent with our staging and that we aren't telling drivers to do different things. And so please make sure that those folks know what your staging plan is and that they're not telling drivers to do something different. more about those mixed messages. Drivers hear not only from school staff, but parents will tell them things, students will tell them things, and then we communicate with them, their dispatch team. A lot of times you might think you're being helpful by telling them a student will be gone for several days and they don't need to go by their house, but they are trained to make every stop every day. It keeps the route on time. So even though you think you're being helpful, it sends a mixed message. And we do want you to communicate with them, but please share that information with us also, so we can share it with their dispatch team. As long as we're all getting the information, not just the driver. So if the information comes through us also, we can share it with first student, and then we're all on the same page. Parents do the same thing with drivers, but drivers are trained to go by every stop every day. It keeps the route on time. So just making sure that drivers get a consistent message from their dispatch team and aren't getting different messages from several different places.
All right, next we're going to talk about special education transportation. Special education transportation starts in your book on page 20. The piece that I am most interested in talking about is actually on page 22, if you want to use that as a reference. Okay, before we get into deep about what you're going to see with special education transportation this year, I want to take a little journey to the past. Historically in this district, when IEP teams determined that a child needed a bus as a related service, every child in the district from age 3 to age 21 received the exact same service with the exact same accommodations. That was, every child in our district was dropped off at their front door and their mom or dad needed to wave at the bus driver. All of them. Doesn't matter what their age is, doesn't matter what their disability is, all of them had the exact same accommodation. As we all know, each child is unique and different, so each bus rider is unique and different. Starting about 14, 15 months ago, the IEP changed. And instead of every child now receiving the exact same accommodations, IEP teams needed to discuss what should transportation look like for this child. Because a child is first entitled to a regular education, every special needs person being transported is entitled to have their transportation look like a regular education child. So that means once an IEP determines, yes, a child needs transportation, automatically it will be an intersection stop or a corner stop like their regular ed peers, and automatically they'll be dropped off with nobody there like their regular ed peers. This is the basic of it. However, we know that that's not appropriate for all of our special needs children. So then IEP teams needed to have the deep discussion of what should this transportation look like. If it needed to look different than a regular education child's, they needed to check boxes for how it looks different. So over the course of the year, every single child has had their annual IEP meeting, and the teams have either checked boxes or not, and now the transportation department has made transportation look like for this coming school year what is on that IEP. And what we have noticed is now that you need to opt into services, there's been a significant change in how our special needs students are being served. My hope is the significant change represents what kids need, and before we were doing something that we shouldn't have. I hope it doesn't represent that there are paperwork errors. So right up here is data, and to me, data tells stories. The first piece of data is UDO, which is the kid who is dropped off without any parent there. Mom or dad doesn't need to be there. The driver's gonna open the door and they're gonna say, see you later, bye, have a good day, regardless. Okay? Back in the day, last year, we had 11% of kids who got off the bus without their mom or dad there. This year, we have now 44%. Okay, so these are the kids who can get from the bus to their home without any concerns. They know how to open their door if it's locked. They know how to get to their house. They don't get lost. They're able to be at home alone. About half of our special needs transportation kids have this now. Okay, moving on. Back in the day, these stats have flip-flopped. Back in the day, we had more than 80% of our students on special needs transportation getting dropped off at their front door. However, teams have now determined that most of our kids can navigate from the corner. So what you'll see this year is almost all of our special education students in this district will no longer have a home stop, they will now have a corner stop. Okay, that's a huge change for our families. And it needs to be communicated to our families if their stop is at their home or at the intersection. Like I said, most of them are at the intersection. On our first day of school, it is busy. Moms are taking pictures of their kids getting on the bus for the first time, right? And putting it to Facebook. Here, juniors, first day of kindergarten. Okay, this is happening all across the district. Kids are figuring out where their bus is. Drivers are figuring out who their kids are. It is busy. It is chaotic. On the first day of school, my hope is that these 72% of kids who are now at the corner, that they are at the corner waiting for their bus to come, not looking outside their living room window. Because on the first day, if the bus comes to that corner and that special needs child isn't there, the bus is going to move on to the next child and the next child and the next child. The bus is not going to go back for parents who misunderstood and thought that they could wait in their living room. They do need to be waiting at the intersection. Okay, so this is a big change for us. I'm excited because hopefully it means that our students are being served appropriately, but it will be different and our families need to know that it's different. So either they know already or they need to know soon.
And with our special needs kids, talking with a lot of you, we know that many of them can make it to their closest corner to get on their bus, that they do not all need stops at their homes. So that's one of the main reasons we looked at changing how the IEPs are done. Also, that integrated bus seat, a lot of you noticed that some of your kids with safety vests were coming in, and I was receiving calls saying he's not bringing his safety vest in. That integrated seat is the reason. If the bus has integrated seats, they do not have to wear the safety vest or the car seat. They don't have to use it. So if you see them coming in without the safety vest, they are on an integrated bus seat. Also, on safety vest, if you notice one of your students changes the size, please let somebody in our office know, your scheduler or myself, so we can change that on your run sheet. Because if they have a sub, they're just going to grab the size that is listed on the run sheet, and if they've gone from a medium to a large, that sub is going to show up with that medium, and that student's not going to have the proper vest to ride home. And they're not going to be able to get on that bus, and we're going to have to wait for somebody to get a vest out to you. The input form, we have those on pretty much everybody that rides the bus. When I've talked with some of you and I've said, what helps this kid ride home? What can we help with? What do they like to talk about? Can we put fidgets? Can we put coloring sheets? Can we count police cars? Can we count construction equipment? Those are things that we can put on the bus, we can put in the blue bag to help make the ride successful. Any of those things I have in my office or I can get to get on the bus to help the ride more successful. The last thing we want is to make it stressful on the student or the driver. I know you guys don't like hearing that they had a bad ride or they're pulled over on the side of the road for an hour trying to get somebody to calm down. This is what the run sheet, a sped run sheet looks like. Every student now will have the type of drop-off the student requires in front of their name. It won't just be for the student that can be let off by themselves. LOS is for line of sight. That just means that the driver has to have eye contact with an adult. Wave, I can see you, you can see your child, and they can go on. Hand to hand, that means that an adult or somebody that is listed as an emergency contact has to come to the bus, take that child, and move on. That is not just for home. If you put hand to hand for that child, that means somebody at the school also has to come out through the bus to receive that child. If you've determined that they can't get off the bus at home, then somebody at the school too must come get that child. I had this discussion with the mom Friday. There's no reason you can't walk 172 feet from your door to the corner to get your child. If you're at an elementary school, I took the time to go through every single IEP and send a spreadsheet to every social worker, IEP manager, classroom teacher, principal, saying these are the kids you have that now have changes in their IEP that include corner stops.
Did we do that to a middle school? Or middle schools?
And they had district leadership come out to those schools.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm even more optimistic.
so, yeah. And there was also in-services held where they went step by step on what's expected for your students. So there was training done with IEP managers and classroom teachers on what was expected on this new IEP a year ago. So it's not, this was all aware, all done, even before the changes were officially put in and the button was clicked of what the new IEPs look like, there was training before that. UDO,
I have a question before you answer that. What if you get an email that says, this was done by mistake, can we let it slide and can you change
No.
it until we get it changed?
no. That IEP is federal paperwork. Mickey asked, if you email me and say, we want Joey to, that was a mistake, can you just let it slide until the IEP's done? No. When I first took this job, I would get emails from teachers and say, oh, we'll get it done by this date. Can't do that. Just like in a classroom or whatever, they can't say, oh, he's supposed to be in a categorical classroom or he's supposed to be pull out. We'll get the IEP changed when we get time. You can't do that. And we're not going to do that. Because what if something were to happen, say, we want him to be let off by himself until we get the IEP changed? What if that kid darts out in front of a car? Well, I have an email that said it was okay. Nobody's going to support my email. We are still liable. We are not going to change a thing until that IEP says that it's done. You can email me and say, we did the amendment this morning, the IEP's changed, then we'll go change your transportation. But we're not changing anything until the IEP is finalized. UDO is unattended drop off. That means the bus pulls up, hey Johnny, have a nice day, see you in the morning. Unattended drop-offs happen at home. We have some kids that have wheelchairs, they're those little sport wheelchairs. They need no help at all. They wheel those things up and down. We got a kid at Northwest, he gets up to the door, he gets out of it, he flips it up on the porch, and he, uses his hands to get up to the door, unlocks it, and he's in. He's completely independent. He is a UDO. We have some kids that are UDO at corners. So they get off at the bus at the closest corner and they walk themselves up the block and they go in the house and they're perfectly safe. AA, administratively approved. These are your regular ed students that we have put on special ed runs, hearing assigned, foster care, McKinney-Vento kids. Some of you guys don't have any regular ed buses at your school. So we're not going to add a run to a school if we don't need to. If we have room and space on a sped bus, we're going to add them to that run. But we can't mark them as sped, so we needed a way to mark them as regular ed students, and that's what that AA does. And it also lets us know at the end of the school year which kids we can automatically pull off. And that's what that lets us do. The ampersand there that says like East Kincaid and South Poplar, if you have an address that has like Meridian and Harry, if you look after that, it will tell you if it's going to be on the side street. Had a call last week and says it's on a busy street. Read the rest of the stop and it will tell you which side street it is on. We are not going to put kids on busy streets. We're not going to stop in the middle of South Seneca for a kid. We will put them on Dallas. So please read the rest of the stop. And like Mickey said earlier, your special ed runs are your 400s in the morning, your 500s in the afternoon. Your pre-Ks or your 600s are going to school. Your 700s are taking them home.
The number one thing that I want you to take away is let's get kids on the right buses on the first day of school. Number two is this piece. And just my biggest concern is that 44% of our district kids that are now unattended drop-offs. So district-wide, that's about 800 kids. At your school alone, if there's 100 schools, that's probably 8 or 10 kids at your school that are now dropped off without a parent. Hopefully that is okay, but if there's anything that you need to drive your attention to, I would strongly suggest seeing where the UDOs are at your school. Your run sheets are in a bus binder. Take a look at your UDOs, ask around, does that seem right? Call the parent and say, hey, by the way, I'm just verifying your bus information. Here's what's gonna happen this year. Because if something goes wrong where we drop somebody off in the community several blocks from home without an adult, it's gonna be these that are the UDO. Right, the ones that need to be picked up now at the bus door hand to hand, that's an inconvenience for mom and dad, but nothing's gonna go wrong because mom and dad are gonna be there. If the bus stop is now at a corner, it's inconvenient, but the bus and mom, they meet there. It's the UDOs that is the number one thing to take a look at. After you get through your UDOs and verify that, calling the parents, hey, this is okay, take a look at the rest, but that's where I would start. I know that you guys are each very busy, but this is really important to keep our babies safe out there, okay? Go ahead.
If we have students that have a house address, but they could be at a corner, do we look at that as well?
Okay, so the way that our bus schedule, the question was, is what if we have a kids and it looks like they're picked up at home, but we really think it could be an intersection? And here's what I can say about that. I'm gonna go back to how does our bus scheduler schedule kids? And here's what we did, is we pulled every kid with yes for transportation on their IEP. And then we pulled out every single check box, home stop, and the ones that had yes as marked in there, they put them on a home stop. Next, we pulled out the ones that were intersection, we put them on intersections. Then we pulled out the UDOs and we typed UDO before their name. Then we pulled out the ones that were, and so forth. So it's all just from the IEP report. We don't do any thinking, we don't analyze present levels, we don't take a look at what their classes are or what their IQ is. That's not our business here. We are a part of the system that takes what you guys give us and we provide it to the kids because that's our job. So if there is something that you think looks inappropriate, it's time to bring that IEP team back together. You can double check that, hey, is what's on the run sheets, what's on the IEP, and my hope is we have 100% accuracy. But if it doesn't seem right, you gotta bring that team back together.
Email me and I can double check it.
Yep, and Christia says, hey, email her, she is a SPED guru for sure, but email her or anyone else that you need to. All right, guys, I'm gonna move on from here. If you have other questions, like I said, email Christia, email your scheduler, email any one of us, and we'll help you. My biggest priority, and hopefully I'm making this clear, is that your babies are safe. And anything you can do to help with that, I would greatly appreciate. I know that you guys do a lot, but it is very important.
Okay, a little bit more about First Acts. Already mentioned that the actions taken on your end need to be entered weekly, if not daily. Please communicate with your drivers and monitors about students with repeat behaviors. We met with drivers and monitors at their orientation a couple of weeks ago. I really tried to hit this home with them about the write-ups and using this system in a more productive manner and how the write-ups should not be their go-to. There are correction strategies that they should be using before ever going to a write-up, and so we need this system to work better for all of us, and just doing write-up after write-up after write-up is not the answer. And so especially with these students that have the repeat behaviors, I want them to be having a conversation with you and vice versa. First Acts gives us that opportunity to see the history of behaviors, and some of you use that history if you have a process you're going through with students. Some of you don't really use that. So if you have a driver that is constantly writing up students or a particular student, and you want that history or you don't want that history, have a conversation with the driver. Tell them, do it daily or do it weekly or don't do it. And I've asked them to do the same. If you have a student that is constantly doing the same behavior and you've written them up repeatedly, just because you still see the behavior doesn't mean it hasn't been addressed. And they do have the ability to go back into the system and see what actions you have taken. And I remind them all the time they need to do that. They need to have a conversation with you. And just because they continue to see the behavior doesn't mean that the behavior hasn't been addressed. But the communication between both of you needs to happen, and I just don't want them to continue to write up just for the sake of writing up. If you're using those write-ups in a process and you want to see that history, great. But if they're just writing up just because they, some of those drivers, they are just, going to do a write-up because they want to, But if it's not helpful and productive, then I just don't want write-ups bogging down the system. It has to be, beneficial for everyone. So have that conversation. Either you want the write-ups or you don't. If you're using them to see that history on those repeat behaviors, great. We did remove everyone from the system at the end of the year, so everyone will be put back in, and you'll get a new welcome email to log back in with credentials. And if you need to see archived incidents from last year, we can access those for you.
All right, I want to go through how to close out a first acts incident. And I know some of you had the experience in Synergy closing out like a teacher referral. And it's a multi-step process for the administrators where you have to take from teacher referral to what the action actually was, type in, or what the offense was, type in what the action was, and it takes several minutes. This is not that. Synergy also, teacher referrals in there require most often just an admin or an admin intern to do it. This is also not that. Every single person that's here in the room today is eligible to close out these referrals and encouraged. What we found last year is that it would take a long time, or if at all, schools to close out referrals. And I do believe the schools talked with the child. I just don't think they closed the loop. When you close the loop, the driver knows that you're in partnership with them, and they also know that an action was taken. So it's really, really important to close the loop by closing the referral. Okay, again, any single one of you can do this. So at your building, if you were a clerk, your administrator might say, hey, can you be the one who closes out my bus referrals this year? Or if you're the teacher that does the discipline, you might be the one that closes them out. Or it could be the administrator. It doesn't matter, just get them closed. All right, so here's the deal. You get this email. It says you have a referral. There's a blue link. You click on the link. Once you click on the link, we'll go ahead and click on it. This pops up. This is your referral. The only thing that you need to do to close a referral is this. This right here is a drop-down menu of what you could have done with the child. Was it a parent conference? Was it a phone conference? Was it a suspension? Was it a detention? Was it other? You drop this down, you click on it, and then you go to the bottom and you hit submit. You're done. It literally takes probably 12 seconds. I'd really greatly appreciate it if you could support your drivers in closing out these referrals. They're pretty quick. And then that way we can grab data too to see what type of offenses and what type of actions are taken for our kids on the bus. Julia and Mickey help with behavior quite frequently, and just having that closed loop helps them as well.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit, when we first started the bus management program, if you will, drivers did not feel like they were being supported by the school. And that was one of the reasons why we started it. And again, they're able to go back into the system and look at what you're doing at the school to rectify situations. The other thing that I wanted to bring up too is, and Julia touched on it, is the communication with the drivers. What happens if a student's being written up 6, 7, 8 times and we haven't even talked to the driver to find out really what's going on? Buses get out of control that way if we're not communicating. And I tell drivers all the time, we tell drivers all the time, you have to communicate with the bus supervisors. Well, vice versa. Communicate with your drivers, okay? because sometimes they don't say a word, and sometimes you don't even get write-ups, and you have no idea that there are issues on a bus. So make sure that you're communicating with them. Late runs. Each secondary school is allocated an 801, 802. So if you're a middle school or high school, you do get that 801, 802. Used to be the 802 started later and then finished up before winter break, and then they started later after winter break and ended sooner before school was out. You can actually get your 802 from day one. If you do need your 801 and your 802, please communicate that to your scheduler. We will not start the 801 or 802 if you're not telling us that you need it. We have no way of knowing that unless you tell us. So make sure that you're communicating with those folks at your schools, coaches, tutors, whomever it may be. Find out if they need that right away, if that 801, 802 right away, and just let your scheduler know. We'll get it taken care of for you. Rider rosters. Please make sure that you have a roster of every student who is riding on your late runs. That is important. If we have an accident, we have fights, whatever it may be, we need to know who's on those buses. So please keep track of that if you will. Students need to know the run number. That's pretty important. Okay, we got an 801 going north, 802 may be going south. They need to know which way they're going. So they need to know what that run number is. Stop locations, schools determine and can change. Again, used to be they were set. We did not change them. Sorry for your luck. We did change that several years ago. If you have stops that are not being utilized and you have students who live in certain areas and it's feasible, because we still have that time constraint and it's feasible, we can delete stops and add stops that are actually being used. So if you need it changed or you need a new stop, let us know, but also be prepared to let us know what stops aren't being used because again, we still have to consider time. Neighborhood corner stops, those are the only stops that we make for late runs with the exception of a special needs student that has transportation on their IEP. We are still required to provide that service for a special needs student. And make sure we communicate with parents, make sure that we're communicating with students. Please don't tell a kid, hey, you're gonna be on the 801 and say nothing else. You need to make sure that you know where that student lives and what stop that student is supposed to get off on. We had students that live on the west side of town that were dropped off on the east side of town because there was no communication and the student had no idea where they were supposed to get off. And we spent a lot of time that evening looking for a kid and had no idea where they were. Question?
Yeah, is there a maximum number of stops for the 801 and 802?
Typically those stops go an hour,
Okay.
and however many we can put on there.
Okay.
Okay, typically probably not gonna have any more time than about 12 to 13 stops, maybe a couple more. It depends on where they're at. I'm sorry?
Combined or for each?
For each.
Okay.
So again, we're not gonna start north and go way west and then come back down south. We're not gonna do that because then you're looking at 2 or 3 stops. A school like Northeast Magnet that has a student in the southwest part of town, probably 2 stops on the whole run because they still gotta get to Northeast.
And this information can't stay in this room. You gotta share this information with your coaches, your music department, your tutoring programs, because you're probably not the one talking to those students and parents. It's those folks. And a lot of confusion with these late runs. These parents and students don't understand how they work. And so many calls about these kids not understanding how these stop locations work. So please share this information with those athletic departments and music departments and tutoring program staff.
They work with the neighborhood schools, right? It's the neighborhood schools.
It's not the neighborhood schools, no.
Actually, some of them are.
Some of them might be, but intersections,
Yeah.
Okay.
We've gone away a lot. Probably about a third of them are neighborhood. A lot of them are really just corner stops and they're centralized to those students that utilize to stop in that area. So the walk distance is different. It can be longer It could be longer, but yeah. We try to get them as close to the corner as we can to their home, but sometimes it's not feasible.
Crosswalk Projects. The city has gotten to 6 of the schools on our 26 school list. These projects became much more involved when the city started working on them, much more than just painting involved. So some resurfacing, some curbing, some wheelchair ramps. So these projects will take a lot of time, but they will keep working on them. They will work throughout the year, and it will take, I'm sure, a couple of years to get through our list, but know that we will continue to work through the list. And probably they designated weekend projects and weekends that we have an additional day, like a 3-day weekend, and we have one September, October, and November. But we tried to prioritize based on need, and based on those photos that you shared with me, we tried to prioritize, which crosswalks were in the worst shape. So I appreciate your patience, and I know that some of them are really bad, but we have that list, and we'll keep working through it. So I know there's a lot of need out there, and I know you're probably wondering why hasn't my crosswalk been done yet, but we'll keep on that list. So thank you for sending me all those photos, and we'll keep on it.
We're going to take a look at the Board of Education policies this year as a district. So the transportation policies that I use to govern my work were updated last in May 1999. So it was a little while ago, maybe a generation ago in some cases. So it's time to take a look at them, which I'm really looking forward to doing, and looking forward to doing with a diverse group of people. On the back is a sign-up sheet to become part of this committee. Please sign up if you are interested, if transportation is something that you enjoy working with, if you're just interested in having an impact on the whole district and going beyond your building walls, if you need committee meetings for internship type stuff or whatever, just sign up and we'll take a look at these and we'll see what we can do. There are places where I think we're going to make some changes.
We appreciate all of you being here, and we appreciate all of the support you give us throughout the year. Your support is greatly appreciated. So thank you for being here, and that concludes our session for today. So you're free to go.